Alrighty, what's going on, Macro Perspective peeps? I'm really excited for this conversation. This is a conversation more down the path of areas that Marcos and I are definitely not experts in. So we've got Zac Wayne, an expert here, on something phenomenal. We've spoken about emotion, cognitive health, mental health, depression, different things. But what are the other avenues on how to support that? We talked about ketamine support, and then there's other avenues like psilocybin. I barely know anything about it. I know a little bit, but I've gotten some support from Zac here through his company called Psilovibe Church. But we're going to have an expanding conversation. So I want you guys to listen to this. It's probably going to be a little bit heavy, not heavy, it's casual. Who knows? But Zac, would you mind introducing yourself to the world of the Macropod audience and kind of like the world that you work in day to day?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Seamus, Marcos, thanks so much for having me on the macro perspective. I love what you guys are doing in terms of really tackling the broader perspective of holistic health, wellness, fitness, all of those great things. So it's nice to have a shiny beacon in the world for all things wholesome and good, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, my man. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Zac Wayne. I'm the founder of Psilovibe Church. We are a national organization. We've got about 15,000 members across the country, and we operate a little bit differently than a normal organization. We are a 508c1a, which is a subsect of a 501 nonprofit, and we're able to operate in 44 out of the 50 states that honor the religious use of these natural medicines, also known as entheogens. And in that class are things like psilocybin, DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which we'll get into a little bit later as well. It's produced endogenously in the human body, as well as things like mescaline, which is found in the San Pedro and peyote cactuses. So really our approach is this, is that nature has given us all of the tools that we need in order to connect with ourselves, with our community, and with the greater cosmos abroad right here in these tools. And we believe that they were created with that intentionality for us to be able to connect on all of those levels. And so we've been around for about 18 months, coming up on 2 years. And over that span, I've had the opportunity of working with hundreds of people individually and thousands of people indirectly online to be able to guide people on what's exactly best for them, whether it be microdosing, which Seamus, you and I have talked about a little bit before, all the way up to what we call a macro dose journey, where it's a deep dive of typically 5 or more grams, where you're really just in the state of surrender. We can talk about ego death and really allowing people to heal in a way that they never have before. Many people have said that one journey is the equivalency of like 20 years worth of talk therapy within just a few hours. So it's really powerful, and it's really exciting to see this sociological resurgence. You see it on Netflix. There's a number of documentaries about psychedelics and entheogens, and you see it in the headlines. Oprah Winfrey recently did an interview with Michael Pollan, not too long ago, that really highlights these benefits. And so excited to be here and excited to talk about it more.
So what are the 6 states that don't allow for this exemption or use case?
Cool. So I didn't prepare for a quiz, but no, just kidding.
That's
No.
awesome.
So New Jersey, North Carolina, Vermont, believe it or not, Oregon. So Oregon, it's okay to use. They've decriminalized it and pretty much legalized it, unless it's for religious purposes, which is kind of a
Odd.
strange concept, right? And then there's a couple more. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah. So there's 6 states that specifically don't have that written into their state's constitution. But other than that, the other 44 states do have it written in. It's also a federal law, which is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, passed in 1993, which again allows for the entheogenic use for sincere religious purposes. And so it's very important. We like to say that it's not a loophole that we found for anyone that has had a macrodose experience on one of these entheogens. It's almost impossible to have without using the word spiritual. It is a spiritual experience, plain and simple. And so it was really easy for us to find and take that route.
Damn. And that was a 508? Sorry.
Yes, C1A, it's known as a free church or a faith-based organization.
Okay. There's a lot of numbers thrown my way. I understand 501c3, and then you said it's a 501c3 that kind of offshoots of that. Okay, cool.
Correct.
This is only for my own personal housekeeping in my head. So interestingly enough, so you mentioned 5 grams, which would be what? Is that like?
So if you had an eighth, for example, that would be 3.5 grams. I think most people are familiar with that measurement quantity, sometimes for more devious purposes. But if you
Yes.
had an eighth, that's going to be a little bit more than that at 5 grams.
Shit. Okay. I remember I was a dumb young kid and I did a half an eighth. I did a 16th,
There you go.
first time. So not quite the ceremonial macro dose you're mentioning, but I was like trying to do the math in my head. I was like, wait, 28 grams divided by this, carry the one from the math major. Damn. So it'd be like 4x that or that number. So that's I can only imagine.
Yeah,
For individuals,
I've done up to 14 grams, which is half an ounce. And I've recently heard of one individual who happened to be a heroin addict, and he did 50 grams. Don't ask me the consumption method. They must have ground it up and made it into a tea, because I can't imagine how a stomach could hold 50 grams of really anything, particularly mushrooms. But he was immediately cured of his heroin addiction through that amount and has since never gone back.
That's insane, dude.
scared straight, bro. I mean,
Basically.
Yeah, like
yeah.
I feel like that's what I've been hearing about, like with psilocybin. Like it's just so. I mean, okay. So I spoke with Zach, and I've been working on some emotional things. I spoke with Dr. Fadul first. Like I spoke with him, and we talked about ketamine, and he's like, "No, ketamine's not for you. Like that's more like low emotions, depression, things like this. Psilocybin was more about like connection, empathy, things that I struggle with in certain states of mind. The macrodose, I've been out for like a month now, and I feel it working in the background. I feel it working in the background. Definitely been feeling more like I love connecting with my wife more for sure. But I do notice like in that state of like getting to anger and stuff like that, I can sense myself pausing just a little bit more than I used to, which is what I was looking for. But I've never understood the fact that like these crazy addictions is like what the psilocybin's been talked about is like people literally fixing their whole life with like one session. All these addictions, all these things, like how what is that? Like how come it's so powerful for that? Like it's crazy.
Sure. Well, a very common saying about addiction is that the opposite of addiction is connection. And so when you look at these large dose experiences, when you are plugging in, many people say with the into the consciousness of God itself, then all of the sudden this disconnection of I'm insignificant, I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, which in essence is the reason that people use to begin with. I've struggled with addiction in the past myself. I'm a recovering alcoholic, recovering addict. So I'm somebody that can speak on this topic directly with some authority of personal experience. And whenever we can bypass those old beliefs of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, through something that it has been equated to a near death experience, although obviously much safer, then you start to see this sense of connection returning, this sense of belonging returning, this sense of significance returning, this idea that I'm not just a drop in the ocean, I'm the entire ocean in a single drop. And so these ideas entirely turn on their head and become the polar opposite. Disconnection becomes connection, unworthiness becomes worthiness, disbelief becomes belief. And the result of that is all of a sudden, people no longer feel the need to numb, to escape, to detach. And that's why it's so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I can look back to like the one and only time I ever utilized psilocybin, and it was pretty damn profound. It's actually shaped a lot of my adult life because I did it at like 17 years old, 18 years old. I mean, it's been like really like 15 years ago, but like as a result, the anxiousness and anxiety that's related to utilizing like marijuana is I like can't do it. It's like weird, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's just like, granted, I did have like a weird, or maybe it was a curing moment where I like completely blacked out and then emerged like a phoenix from the ashes, only to get my parents yelling at me because I was a dumb kid still living at home. I've been like ever since then. It's just like anything that's like altered state of mind is like not a happy place for my mind. Theoretically could be like a cure, right? Like all it took was one instance of, a 16th to create that. And I look back at that moment and like you're mentioning, there were these states of thought and being that were very unique that I can still pull from, and seeing the painting on the wall, feeling the water from it, right? From this boat. And then my dog almost transforming into like a panther or like tiger looking creature. And like the lava lamp having as my friend called it, it was his army at the time. Like these little minions, he was just like staring at it like enthralled for hours. And me staring at a ceiling fan for close to 4, so it was just like, I can still remember it, the thoughts, the feelings, and all those things from one moment of it, and then not ever like necessarily needing or wanting to really feel that way again.
Sure.
I mean, not again, like could it be something else to help break through some of the anxiety that's related to the state of losing that sense of like self, right? Maybe like again, like a very maybe 5 milligrams, not 100. I don't even know. Like, you know what I mean? But like, could that lead to just like Seamus is mentioning, kind of like this background stuff or more empathy or just diving into these emotions more that I'm a little more guarded with? And things that my wife says that why does everything have to be so logical with you? It's like it is, therefore it is.
Sure, yeah, and that's just the wonder of how each of our individual brains are wired, right, respectively. But I really like what you said, and bringing up to Seamus's point about the potential benefits of the flip side of that massive macro journey, right? Talking about microdosing. Microdosing is something that over the last 5 years, particularly, has really taken off by storm because people have finally been more open. Like I said, we're having kind of a psychedelic resurgence to this concept. Beforehand, there was so much stigma behind it, thanks to Nixon, thanks to Reagan, just say no, that, I mean, before I tried it, so my first experience was in 2019, so not that long ago. And before I tried it, I just had all of the stigmas in mind based on these horror stories, right? Like, I'm going to think I'm a glass of orange juice and not be able to do anything about it. I'm going to think I can fly and try to jump out of a 10th story balcony. No, by the way, kids, that's PCP, okay? That's not psilocybin. And all of these things, or maybe at best, I'm just going to see some shapes and colors that aren't there, and I'm going to hallucinate, and all of these things, and all of these stigmas. My first experience with it, and then we'll go back to the microdosing aspect, was 7 dried grams. So I was saying that 5 is known as the hero's journey, according to Sir Terence McKenna, who is considered by many the godfather of psilocybin mushrooms. He and his brother wrote a book, one of the very first books about how to grow it at home under these pseudonyms. Really fascinating history there. But that was my first experience, and I'm really glad it was because that opened me up to understanding what I now refer to as universal truths and wisdom that our church is based on. An example of that is that we are all connected. We are all one. The Eastern philosophies have been talking about this for thousands of years, for millennia. Another universal truth and wisdom that everyone uncovers on these journeys is that consciousness, contrary to popular belief, is not confined to the human brain, and that in fact, thought is frequency, thought is energy, and that it's connected to the entire cosmos, and that your consciousness can travel to one end of the universe to the other in a split second because it's all connected, interconnected. Another one being that death is an illusion, akin to waking up from a dream, that when our physical bodies die, we don't actually go anywhere. We don't die because, according to the first law of thermodynamics, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred. So science already knows this also, just in a different setting. But going back to the microdosing aspect, that has become so popular, particularly over the last 5 to 10 years, for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's been a mainstream breakout. Like I mentioned before, if you go onto Netflix right now, you're easily going to be able to find at least 5 or 6 documentaries and movies that directly reference psilocybin or other psychedelic entheogens. And so having that out there, which is providing more access of education to people, has been huge. There's other massive heroes in that space, such as Michael Pollan, Paul Stamets, who is in pretty much every single one of those documentaries. Joe Rogan is another massive proponent. He's been talking about DMT for easily the last 5 to 10 years
Yeah.
on his podcast. And of course, him holding the #1 podcast spot for many, many years and kind of being the godfather of podcasts, let's be honest, him being a champion of psychedelics, people like that, it's just been a huge help to actually have people say, hey, maybe the stigma is wrong. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, microdosing, hugely beneficial. And what it does, it's basically like a road crew that you deploy to your brain, right? And microdose by definition is subperceptual, meaning that you shouldn't have any physical effects of it whatsoever. It's generally 1/10 of a threshold dose. So right around 100 milligrams. Those are the capsules that you're currently taking, Seamus, I believe. And what it does is it's, again, like deploying a road crew to your brain to reconnect new neural pathways or neurogenesis, creating brand new ones. So we have two aspects, neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. Neurogenesis, which, by the way, 20 years ago or so was thought to be entirely impossible. There was no such thing as neurogenesis. That was a farce. Once your brain has started to degenerate, that's it. And now we're seeing promising new studies in the realm of Alzheimer's and dementia just by using microdosing, because it's now proven, it's no longer a theory, that it will connect these new neurons together, forming new pathways. And so it's really beneficial for people who find themselves stuck in habitual loops of anxiety and depression, which are just thought loops that have been repeated so many times that that becomes their new personality, that becomes their new norm. I learned recently too that people can become addicted to cortisol, which is fascinating. Cortisol, the stress hormone. So that even if you've practiced it enough times, even if you're not in the moment having an anxious thought, your brain is going to go through cortisol withdrawals and say, "Hey, I need another hit." And it'll just produce it by itself, which then trigger the anxious thoughts, which then triggers more cortisol. And it's this nasty negative loop. And so what microdosing does is allows the brain to stop for a second, to pause, and to be able to choose something differently instead of falling into those habitual habits. And we've seen massive success among our organization with microdosing, life changing. I was not a believer in microdosing until I started this organization and started to see the benefits of it from everybody else, and just tons of comments and and now of course I'm sold.
That is so awesome. I mean, first and foremost, yeah, you got some great heroes. I mean, the first time I kind of heard about psilocybin was from, and who's a big proponent of, is like Tim Ferriss, who put like millions into funding some research to finally get that. And I think some of that research finally like made headway these last few years about like certain military groups, certain things, and like VAs and stuff like that, veterans, and so that's been interesting. But it's so true that process. I feel like people are more open, and it's so great to hear even things outside of just like empathy, like Alzheimer's, those things. Like that is so cool because um, I feel like that's where we get to, right? Like once you get to this, you're doing this thing, this microdose, because you are aware. Like you are aware that there is an issue, but you're
Mhm.
struggling to create the space to work on said issue. Like you said,
Mhm.
you may have done talk therapy, you may have done different things, but this is a powerful compound. You have to give it respect. I know that when we talked about it, you're like you have to. You just don't take it like a supplement. You give it a respect. You give it
An intention.
an intention and the container that you're in, that it moves forward in that way. So I'm very like cognizant of that whenever I take it. I'm like, all right, like I'm in perpetuity. This is the feeling I'm giving right now. So I'm gonna I'm gonna take that throughout the day. So if you're in a bad state, it's gonna be a bad state. But yeah, the psychedelics, like the microdosing, that all those things that you're just talking about, I feel has given me a lot more of that empathy. It's given me a lot more of that connectiveness and all this. But the cortisol thing, I don't think people understand this enough. I know that Marcos and I talk about this a lot just because we coach people. But the way people stress out about things, right, Marcos, when you look at it as like an outside observer, as a coach, you're just kind of like, you didn't know that was your problem? Like, we talk about nutrition and exercise, right, Marcos? But it's like, that's what you're doing. Like, like you need like an objective observer to be like, you
Hmm.
didn't see that, like sometimes it's like so plain, like, oh yeah, like I go crazy at work, and because I'm crazy at work, I'm stressed, so I go eat somewhere, like it kind of perpetuates this thing. The US has like, I think statistically has more hypomanics than every other country out there. Everybody's like this, like energy wise, they want to be like this all the time. So people talk about these hypomanics that have like, they crash. It's not that they're depressed, it's just that they're up all the time. Their system is just so dysregulated because it's up all the time that they never play in the other spectrum of like recovery or like relax. Like they just don't know how to.
Hmm.
They're not in this state they think they're depressed, but they're just like actually normal. It's kind of crazy. I mean, people get addicted to what they've habituated to, like this constant like go 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 thing, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's really the thanks to the society that we're in, right? Society awards the grinders and the doers and the achievers. And not to play into the cliche, but it's perfectly applicable here, is that, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And we forget that. I was just listening to an Alan Watts audio recording the other day. If you're not familiar, yeah, he's fantastic. Give me the okay. So yeah. And he was, as he does, talk about how the river doesn't have to try to flow to find its way to the ocean. It just does. A tree doesn't have to try to produce its leaves. It just does. It's what it does. But us, as the top of the food chain intellectually, as the sentient beings here on planet Earth, somehow we think that we don't have to, or that doesn't apply to us, that we have to use our big thinking brains 24/7, be able to conquer and do and achieve. And now, don't get me wrong, we were given the larger prefrontal cortex for a reason, to be able to reason, to be able to use logic, to be able to do. But unfortunately, that becomes the captain and the driving force for so many of us, that we forget to just do.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, just to forget to just be. And that's another benefit of psilocybin, especially even microdoses, but particularly on a macro journey, is I would challenge anyone to try to take 5 or more grams on an empty stomach and then try to use your phone normally as you normally do. It is a challenge. First of all, the screen might be melting, it might be moving. And secondly, during these experiences, our consciousness rather detaches from the prefrontal cortex as we're expanding into a larger sense of consciousness, or merging with a larger portion of consciousness. And so these types of experiences are really great also to kind of force people to unplug. Like, you're not really going to have a choice in the matter, and you better just relax and go with it, or else you may have a lot of points of friction, or what people refer to as a bad trip, which, by the way, I don't believe in. I believe there's challenging experiences, but even those, if you can have the attitude of total surrender, can be massively healing and beneficial.
This is what we need, Marcos. We need like our members and patients and people that we work with to like probably get to that space, because I think people are looking for, and I say this with like, because I don't know any other term, but like a way out sometimes from their stressors. And like, what do they do, Marcos? Right? It's like it's so easy because food is that thing, right?
Oh,
Or just going deep into the social media landmine and just scrolling away, or just like 5 hours on the TV and you're like, shit, I just did like a whole Netflix binge, and it's like, but they're, how do I say, they're like false victories, right? Because it's not, you're trying to recharge, but you're not recharging in the way that's like authentically connecting you. You're recharging through like more dopamine diminishing like returns, I guess. So it's like yeah, like maybe slowing down, creating some kind of separation and true recharge from your prefrontal cortex here and there is probably going to be beneficial. And then obviously put some other routines in there that, that could be super beneficial.
Yeah. So Zach, what really is the ego?
I'm glad you asked. Wonderful question. So, the ego has kind of gotten a misnomer in our society. Whenever we hear the word ego, the first thing that we think about is arrogance, right? Because we use it in that negative connotation of, oh, that guy's got a big ego. And we refer to it of being pompous, of being arrogant, of being full of yourself. But in reality, that's actually not the meaning of it at all. Ego is simply your sense of self. And it's not bad, it's not negative, it's meant to be integrated. Ego is what tells me that I am not you. Ego gives me my sense of autonomy and individuality. Ego is what allows me to differentiate and distinguish myself from everybody else. I am Zach, I'm 37 years old, I live in Colorado. Those are the things that my ego accepts as that identity. But the main purpose of the ego, outside of being able to tell that I'm me and not anybody else, and to hold on my story, is to keep us safe. That is really the only and main job of the ego, is to make sure that I have some sense of self-preservation. The ego is what gives people a fear of heights, which, by the way, I don't personally have, but it's a pretty healthy fear if you think about it. It's a good fear to have overall. I always tell people I'm not afraid of heights, I'm afraid of falling. It's the same thing that would make someone afraid if they were to be locked in a room with a giant tiger and fear for their life. That's the ego. Its job is to protect us, to keep us safe, to keep the body alive. Now, where it becomes a problem is when we only identify with that ego, which is a very limited story. One of the things that psychedelics do is it gives us a broader perspective of who and what we really are. And the ego keeps us very, very small. It keeps us to our limited story. And because all it wants to do is keep us safe, it is terrified particularly of one thing. It is terrified of anything new, any new experience, any new occurrence, anything new, it is terrified of because all it knows is that, hey, up to this point, meaning your body, has stayed alive. That means I'm doing a good job. So anything new, it does not know that it's not going to kill you. In fact, it assumes it will. And so, one of the main reasons that people have that hesitation to really take a deep dive into a macrodose, which, by the way, is almost everyone, even me, I've had 50 to 60 massive dose journeys, and I still get nervous before each one. That's the ego trying to protect me, even though I know that it's completely safe. By the way, psilocybin has about the same toxicity rating as a watermelon. So if you could overdose on a watermelon, then you maybe could overdose on psilocybin, but it's going to be next to impossible to do. So the ego's job being to protect you from anything new because it doesn't know that it's not going to kill you. That's probably the biggest reason why people have that apprehension to take a really deep dive, because these experiences do kill the ego, meaning your sense of self, and you merge with a larger sense of consciousness. And the ego is terrified of that because it doesn't distinguish an ego death from physical death. And so, yeah, I could go on and on about that particular subject, but hopefully that kind of gives an
No,
idea of what the ego
it's
is
a
and
great
what it's
question,
for.
Marcos. Such
I
a
know.
great question. The reason partly why I wanted to do this microdose, Zach, and I'm now thinking I need to go do a macrodose, like I need to clear my calories,
Do it. Do it.
is because of the fact, and my brother he tells me too, he's like, you probably should, is I spoke with you and I spoke with Marcos about this. This year I got married, I'm starting a new position. It kind of like all kind of came at the same time, but I was like, I feel like I need to shed kind of like whatever was here, like maybe any of my constraints, my biases, any self-limiting beliefs. I was like, I kind of feel like I need to shed that going into this new phase. Being a husband, stepping into a new role of work. And I was like, that's what I spoke to you about, because it's like, it was great because like now I feel like I am in this flux, like I'm in this transitory space, as opposed to like, all right, I'm bringing old Seamus into this new situation, old beliefs, old systems. And it's like, no, like I really need to be in a place of flux and transition and allow myself to not necessarily solidify yet, be open, be unguarded, be ready to be adaptable, because this new space that I'm going into requires a next level version of me. I'm gonna take the good stuff. I kind of want to just skate off all those issues that I was dealing with. So yeah, man, it's a ego death. Like I admire it because it's like it's a constant re-evolution, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, and it's a great point. The only reason that I was able to start Psilovibe was because a series of macrodoses specifically was able to give me a larger version of myself and was able to help me see a larger version of myself, that I don't have to be confined to the story that I've been saying all along. And by the way, just to preface everything, I want to make something very clear. Psychedelics are not necessary. They're not mandatory. There are many different paths to the same place. All roads lead home. There are many doors to the same destination. It can be through Eastern philosophy and perhaps other religious ideologies. It can be through general self discipline, which is self love, right? You love yourself enough to deny yourself certain things that may be harmful for you. It can be through a series of helpful books or different philosophies. So there are many, many paths to the same location. But what I would say is that entheogens, specifically psilocybin, and the other ones also, is kind of like a shortcut in a way, but not in the negative connotation where you're missing out on anything. But it is also very important to know that psilocybin or any of the natural medicines, it's incredibly important to integrate. So many times people can have these really life-changing journeys, these incredible epiphanies about healing generational trauma and self-worth and belief and all of these incredible things. But if it's not integrated, meaning taking an action plan, dividing out what you got from the journey and the biggest key takeaway points, and if you don't create action plans for your daily life, even if it's a 5-minute reminder or something that's going to remind you of the sentiment of the journey every single day, then unfortunately it fades away and people don't get the same bang for the buck as they would have if they could integrate those lessons.
What turned you onto it?
So, funny story. So, I am a combat veteran. I was a medic. I was deployed to Afghanistan back in 2011. And
Thank you for
that's
that.
actually, thank you. That's actually where my spiritual awakening happened. I met a civilian electrician there. We're on this little outpost, me and 100 other guys in the middle of the mountains of Afghanistan, constantly getting attacked and bombarded, and they try to overrun us. It was really similar to like a Restrepo type situation. If you've ever heard or seen that movie, these guys are on this little outpost, much like I was, just constantly getting attacked. But we had the civilian contractor there, an electrician. And he is the one who opened me up to metaphysical studies. So things like multidimensional meditations and just broadening mindfulness and awareness. And fast forward some time, I get back from deployment. I start drinking really heavily. The VA puts me on all of these different types of medications. I've been on all of them. I've been on the Prozacs and the mirtazapines and the trazodones, and I can't even remember all of them. Bupropion. I've been on all of those, and what I found is either they weren't effective at all, or they made me feel like a zombie, like I was in this kind of waking dream state, like where everything felt very surreal. And I was like, "Is this even? Am I awake right now?" Like it's just this very kind of weird in between state that some of these drugs can produce. And I lived like that for a long time, all the way up until 2019. I really wasn't taking any of the meds because of those reasons, but I had tried them all over the years. And one day, a buddy of mine came up to me and said, "Hey, have you ever heard of magic mushrooms, of psilocybin?" And of course, I had heard about them, but again, the stigmas were so strong that I really didn't have any initial interest. But he's like, "No, no, no, man, you have to try these." He's like, "I don't want to spoil it for you. I don't want to tell you too much about it because I don't want to set any expectations for you. I just want you to have an open experience." And so, fast forward a few weeks, I finally had the opportunity, and I got my hands on 7 grams, and that's when I dove in. And similar to what you were saying, Marcos, about how you can still vividly remember many of the aspects of your first journey. Same thing for me. I can recall all of the key takeaways, all of the main points, and it was something that I had no idea where it would lead to, but after that first experience, I knew immediately that it was going to be of major significance somehow to me in my life.
I think the hardest part about why this is not getting to the next level is like, oh, I guess maybe in the microdose setting, like a double blind placebo study could actually probably be performed if it's truly at a state that's at a level that is kind of imperceivable. Yet there's just these heightened benefits of mood state, right? Like, I mean, even, I don't know, Seamus, do you feel any different? Do you feel?
No, that's the thing is like I feel like kind of like what Zach said, it's like imperceptible until like it really shows up. I've been mindful when I've been taking it. Like part of the thing that Zach and I talked about was like, look, your next 90 days, don't just do your next 90 days. Like kind of take a little time to reflect. I've always done like a little morning routine, but it's in my morning packs, and on the days that I have it, it's Saturday through Tuesday. Those 4 days, 4 days, 3 days, 4 on, 3 off. Those days, I'm really like making sure I'm in a good state. I take it and I reflect, and I do a little reflection too. And part of like also being able to work at home too, Marcos, like I've been able to reflect a little bit more, not just because I'm not like out of the house, I'm in there. Like arguments, like with Des, like, or things like I'm like, oh, like I'm really noticing, like I'm not getting to that level of irritableness like that I used to have. I mean, I still do talk therapy and things like that. Like I'm still working in these things in different ways. So like as Zach said, like there's different, there's different ways to get home. I'm doing multiple ways. So the perception of it has been more so like in the moment that it shows up. I'm like, oh wow, I can walk this emotion back way ahead. I can see things way ahead when they start showing up, as opposed to like, oh, I'm just in it now. And now I'm reacting. So it's kind of imperceptible until like I need to. to feel it, if that makes sense, Marcos.
Yeah. I wonder, again, maybe that's the way that the research and literature actually has a little bit more of a guiding force, because I think that's one of the biggest issues as it pertains to substances that can create altered states of mind, or in the entheogen type of like category, right? Like of healing. It's because it's pretty obvious if you're utilizing something or not in a double-blind placebo, like, you know, it makes it a little more difficult for people to be like, well, did it actually cure? And I get like the scientific skepticism, but again, like, is it because of that moment 15 years ago? Probably almost to the day. I'd have to really go back to that. I have to really, I have to really like think about it. It was a colder month, but it may have been like, yeah, maybe second half, maybe second semester of like, yeah, junior year. Bad year. But I remember it's funny, Zach, we mentioned like the zombie state. I remember like going through and like having some prescription things because I'm an idiot as a high school kid, and kind of,
Weren't we all?
I know, right? Being in this place where I'm just like, I just don't want to feel anything. Relationship bullshit, you know. Everybody remembers their first whatever breakup, you know, time with your significant other, blah blah blah. And I think it's fascinating to kind of think back and sit here and think like, is this a positive consequence of that journey, right? Like you said, it's not necessarily that it was good or bad, or, you know, it was just it was more difficult for a period of time. But after that like climax, like that climactic moment of like the bad, when you could just kind of like sit there and talk it out and flesh it through. My mom always was like, you were like singing like a bird about everything. I was like, well, I had nothing to fear at that point. I could just tell you everything. All the stuff that I had done up to that point, like, it felt freeing and relieving to let it be known that I don't know why I was making those decisions, but I was. How I was feeling with respect to those emotions that didn't overwhelm me previously. And how, you know, in the years to follow that, like I said, like, I didn't want anything to do with much of anything outside of just like the safety of other people. You know, it was just like, yeah, like, I don't need to drink and drive. I don't need to do those things. I don't like how that's making me feel. And, you know, I would say that there's more benefit out of it over the 15 years than negatives. And all it took was one time. It's pretty wild at the experience. And again, Seamus, did I tell you if I used to give blood, I would pass out?
Yeah, you said that before.
Yeah, like vasovagal. But like the only way to like you know, convince yourself that you're fine from an experience is to kind of just hit it head on, right? So like giving blood over time now, it's like, yeah, if I lay down, I'm fine. Like I just, you know, put myself in a calming situation versus like that amped up state that causes that like passing out. It's the same thing here. It'd be like, I've kind of wondered, you know, like, is there some healing or some things that can go on? Granted, I'm not in it. Like, I mean, maybe I'm in a perfect state now. I'm not in like a down state of mind, you know, and I'm not in this place where emotions are kind of emerging in that category, right? It's like, I'm very positive and in a happy place, and everything that as a result of it would be more freeing and positive and more optimistic. And I'm like, it was like, man, I feel like I'm in the most optimistic state I've been in a hot minute. Thank you, children, for no longer sucking my life and soul. Thank you for being the reason why we brought you onto this planet versus me wanting to take you out of it every time.
There's moments, right? There's moments for all of us.
Oh yeah. I mean like the connection moments and those things. And, you know, again, there's the ability to just feel more intertwined with like the right emotional state. I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's a fascinating concept. Fascinates me. I'm sure that's why it fascinated Seamus as he was going through seemingly the most stressful year of his life thus far. I mean, getting married, you know, the financial stressors, you know, your wife is probably not hitting you up like, when are we making babies? And then, you know, the next thing of like, you know, then you have the job transition, and then it's like, you know, it's like, all right, cool, everything all at once, you know? So
yeah, everything all at once, and now like it's all like I feel like I've arrived on the other side of that, and like I'm fully present now, and like fully like, okay, cool, everything's good now, everything's controlled. Like the biggest thing I was just talking about earlier, Zach, is like the driving. Talk about being addicted to stress. That was like in the morning, in the evening, and now I don't do that. And like that, honestly, in Los Angeles, guys, by the way, for those listening,
Oh man,
like what I've realized is like, wow. And my wife has also realized this too, where she works closer to home now. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm home before 3 p.m., 4 p.m. Like what do I do? Like I have a life. Oh, I could go do that extra jog that I wanted to do, or I could take the dog out, and like, oh, I can go to the store instead of it being closed at 6. I get to do it. So it's like all these little things on the other side of those stressful things. After those decisions made, I'm like, okay, I'm in my flow, doing my thing, but it's like, it's still, you got a lot of work to do, but I'm like, I'm feeling way different in how I feel about it now, just in the environment.
It's amazing. Yeah, I just wanted to circle back and touch back to something that you said, Marcos, about your journey 15 years ago, almost to the day, which is cool. And that was when you were having a conversation with your mom, and she was mentioning that you were singing like a canary, and you mentioned something about just because you didn't have that fear. And again, there's a big benefit of even partial ego dissolution is getting rid of that fear, right? Understanding that so many things that we're afraid of or afraid to talk about or afraid to get out in the open is just simply not necessary. And another thing that I really like that you talked about is just that after the journey that you had, you just kind of felt this shedding and kind of this weight lifted off. And that's another just massive benefit of even microdosing, larger doses and microdosing, is just the ability to really disconnect from all of the lies and all of the stories that we've told ourselves. I've come to the conclusion personally that life is not about achieving, it's not even about becoming, it's about remembering. And it's this process of peeling back the layers of everything that we're not. And so it's not about becoming a better person. We're already good people. We're already great people. We're already loving and kind and empathetic and ambitious. We're already all of these things. It's the blocks and the stories that we tell ourselves that prevent that from really shining through. And so another major benefit of psilocybin, of other entheogens, is it really helps crack that shell. It really helps to start to peel back those layers until eventually what's left, and it's a never-ending process, by the way, so I don't know if eventually is even the right word, but over time, we get closer and closer to that core vibration and that core reality of who and what we really are, which is courageous and kind and adventurous and creative. That being a massive one. We are creators first. That's what we came here to do. And so I just really enjoyed hearing that about your story, about even in that one instance that you had, you were able to pick up on some of these things, which is becoming more and more commonplace knowledge for those that walk this path.
Yeah, it's definitely a like you said, the ego is protecting. Not, I mean, or is it the id? What's the other one? The other one that's like it's self-preservation, but be for like the benefit of others. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying, right? Like it's like my
Mhm.
ego is protecting other people's feelings because how I actually feel in that moment is to not be combative in nature. It's like
Mhm.
not my nature to do that, right? But if I were to
Mhm.
keep my mind clearly as a result of not worrying about the consequences of what I say, that would be a whole different way to live my life, right? I wish I could express myself in that way all the time, but I do, keep in mind that like there's other people's feelings at play. And,
Sure.
there's a lot that gets processed through, like you said, probably that prefrontal cortex or whatever part is like that, like logic and reason of like, if I say this thing, do I really want to go down this road right now? Seamus, that's probably what you're thinking about to your wife, right? If I say this shit, she's gonna be on my ass about this shit. So it's like maybe I could find another way to allow her to bring that to the table in conversation, right? But that's the one that,
Yeah.
like you said, it's like me singing like a canary was me like being like, all right, cool, like I don't give a fuck what my mom's gonna say right now. Like I already fucked up, so it was just kind of like live in this moment. So
Yeah.
she's like, you're grounded. I'm like,
I think it's like the governor, like the inhibition, right?
yeah.
Something like that, where it's like the filter. It's like, yeah, like you can say what you want to say, but if you do say it, it's like, yeah, what's gonna happen?
Yeah, dude, it's like it was like the non-drug version, the social lubricant, right? I had a conversation with a client, Seamus, on Monday or no, yesterday. She was talking about like, how weddings are. She's like, especially weddings in the UK, like you have to have some drinks. Like it's like you're awkward otherwise. I was like, I get that vibe. Like being at a wedding and being stone cold sober can
Mhm.
be really tough. I haven't really been to a wedding where that's necessarily been the case, but I told her like, ironically, the people that were like kind of the life of the party that just didn't give a shit, like, she was like, "This is me sober. Could you imagine what happens when I was a drinker?" And I was like, "I cannot, Norma. You are you are already a vibe, and it's already so much fun. But like,
I love those people.
oh my god, the best. Like they're like, if you want to like bring them if you want to have a good time kind of thing, and they just will carry the night. It made me realize too that like as she's mentioning like how those certain situations it's just easier to be in a crowd of people, right? It makes you think about again like the properties of those things, and our conversation was like kind of like deep and related to that. And I was like, yeah, like now I'm like, I've only really been to like 4 or 5 like actual weddings, and they all were like in the 1 year time span. And that's like the only times I actually have like had any alcohol in the last like,
How much did you have at my wedding?
I had 4. I had 4 drinks because you're
Oh,
up.
that's not bad. That's just lubing up. That's not crossing the line or anything.
You
That's
look like
good.
you're having a good time, man. You look like you're having a
Yeah.
good time.
Well, so I had 4 there, but I think it was, did I have Jack? Yeah, I think it was like Jack and Coke. And then at this one I had rum, but the rum hit differently. And I was like, is it just a different alcohol? I had more rum than I did Jack, but the Jack the next day gave me like, me and Brittany were like not feeling too great. But then with the rum, I was like, I got out, I was like, dude, I don't even feel it. And I tried to talk and it was just like marbles in my mouth. It was the funniest thing. I was like, yeah, babe, you're driving. That was already established. By the way, everybody, that was already established once I had the first one.
Seamus, I need you to get a time machine and retroactively invite me to your wedding if that's cool. If you guys don't mind redoing the whole thing again, it would be cool.
Yeah.
Dude, it was fun. You know, honestly, you probably should have come just because like invited 100 people. There was 3 other plates. One of those plates could have been yours that didn't get scooped up. So.
Very cool.
Oh, dude, speaking of that, you reminded me. We need to connect with one of your people that came we asked him to be on, and I forget his name. And you just reminded me.
I know who you're talking about. He's like a Twitch guy.
Yeah. Before I forget, let's make sure we do that because I know we've been talking about.
He has a big following on Twitch for like video games, it's just crazy. So we'll ask him. But Zach, I want to kind of get. I think we're coming to an hour, so I want to ask a few questions. Like, I know that we talked a lot about psilocybin, but outside of psilocybin, there's other healing concepts too. With Psilovibe, do you guys talk about these things? Are they in your like I think you mentioned like DMT, ibogaine, maybe ayahuasca? Like, are those kind of like other compounds that are talked about or are more making a resurgence nowadays too?
Yeah, absolutely. So DMT stands for dimethyltryptamine. It's known as the spirit molecule. That's another one of our main sacraments in our church. And it's a really fascinating compound because it is produced endogenously in the human body. It's produced in your brain. Your lungs also produce it. And it's particularly produced which is a small pine cone shaped gland in the center of the brain. Eastern philosophy refers to it as the third eye. That's why they have the dot right there. Ancient Egypt referred to it as the Eye of Horus. So interesting that both cultures, totally unrelated, both refer to it as an eye. And the reason for that is because that is the place where you can see a lot of shit and you can have a lot of visuals and it's referred to as like a radio tower, a receiver and a radio transmitter of the brain, connecting everything. It's pretty fascinating. We have some people, because we are referred to as a church and we operate as one. I was saying earlier that it's not just a front. I mean, we meet every single week here locally and have an awesome local growing community here. I'm actually sitting in our sanctuary right now for this podcast, and it's a really just great place for everybody to come together and talk about these concepts. Yeah, it's like I said, it's very difficult to separate these experiences from spirituality. I mean, it's a very spiritual type of experience where you come back with a greater understanding about who and what you really are. But going back to what I was saying about the church, we run into a lot of people, particularly of the Christian faith. And even though it doesn't explicitly say anything negative about these compounds in the Bible, there's a large group of them that just have this kind of negative outlook, like, oh, you can't serve 2 masters, or that's deceiving. You're actually talking to demons, very superstitious type of beliefs. Well, what I like to tell them is well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but the most powerful psychedelic known to man already lives inside of you. It already exists. Your body produces it naturally. And as a matter of fact, there are a number of techniques through breathing techniques. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about these techniques. There's also a 4-day seminar where all they do is talk A buddy of mine, he is the bass player for Flogging Molly, if you guys remember that band. And he and I were talking about this, and he went to one of these retreats. Sorry to shout you out here, Nathan, and they said all we're going to do is we're just going to talk to you basically for 4 days, and at the end of it, if you've done your part of being open and receptive, you will have this powerful experience. In fact, they warned that if you're driving home on the way, and it can happen to people, pull the hell over immediately because you're going to crash and die if you're trying to have this experience while you're driving away from this 4 day retreat. Well, this is exactly what happened to him, sure enough. And he said that it was the most powerful psychedelic experience that he has ever had in his life. And this is a guy that may or may not have done almost every drug on the face of the planet. And he said it was the most powerful, intense psychedelic experience that he's ever had in his life. And that was as a result of the pineal gland dumping all of these chemicals in the brain, the main one of which being DMT. Another interesting compound that's released during these experiences is the same chemical that causes an electric eel to light up. And so that if you were in a dark room and you could remove your skull during this experience, you would literally see your brain light up like a light bulb due to this experience. So just a really fascinating thing. So I like to tell people who are, say no to drugs, which for the most part, that's good advice, right? I'm not saying that's bad advice, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't cut off your nose to spite your face, because your body is already programmed with some degree of pretty incredible intelligence to produce these experiences completely by itself if you know the right techniques.
Yeah.
So
No, this is, oh man, it's good stuff. It's funny because I grew up in a Christian household and faith, and it's interesting
same.
because
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting because it's like it's not so binary. Like it's not like if you're Christian, don't do the. It's like you can still be Christian and just utilize these vehicles.
Absolutely.
So I think it's just like a limited thinking with certain people. But no, that's awesome. It's really interesting. Certain drugs, certain pathways, certain things that they are part of it. I just read something the other day that the runner's high. This was something that just came out a few days ago. They're trying to prove this. It's like the runner's high are working on the cannabinoid processes in the body, and it's not just endorphins. There's these other things going on. I'm like, yeah, there probably is. Like you just have to go deeper into it without even taking in a drug. It's like we really do have, and it's funny because for a lot of the body has a lot of intuition and intelligence already, and it's like we are our own, for lack of a better term, our own pharmacy. We can
Yep.
really access certain things. Yes, we can access these things through work, through maybe a workout, what you eat, through breath work, through sleep, through different things, or maybe, and to treat things like all things as equally bad. Like I think that's why like from early on, like a lot of these compounds just got treated equally bad. And it's like it really stunted a lot of growth scientifically or spiritually
Hmm.
speaking because it's kind of like seed oils right now in the space of of of, of food eating, right, Marco? It's like, seed oils, they're all bad. But then, like, you look at studies on, like, sesame seed oil, and it's been thousands of years they've been using sesame seed oil, and, like, Asian communities don't have diabetes or obesity. It's like, well, is that one bad? And it's like, it's kind of like you can't put a blanket statement on everything. I think every single molecule needs its day and time and different things. Marcos, any last questions for Zach? I know we've taken up an hour's time, so I want to just be respectful.
Well, I do have a question kind of for both of you here. So you guys both were more involved with like the Christian or Catholic based faith growing up.
Hmm.
How does that feel to have this, like you just said, like that second voice or another idol in a sense?
It's
And
so how I break this down is like as human constructs, there's religion, and then there's spirituality, and then there's faith with God or consciousness or whatever you want to say it. You could dissect it in those different ways. If anything, it's just gotten me deeper into the construct of religion, different spiritual activities that are not necessarily practiced in a Catholic or Christian type faith. It's another roundabout way of getting to the same thing. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I know I don't talk a lot about my faith too much. I know we talk about it here, Marcus, but it's like I've just gone deeper in my faith over time.
Mm.
So faith not being the religious dogmas, like dude, the Catholicism is so hypocritical for thousands of years. Like that's why, like, I don't necessarily put it out there. It's like I know the stigma around that, So it's like, but
So then why get married in the church?
that's the thing. That's where, like, we're gonna open up a whole conversation here. short term. Sure, it's not that component of Catholicism like those negatives are. I'm just trying to take the positive benefits under God. There's a commitment that was under God. I mean, you were there.
I know. I'm
See, to me, I've learned to really have an appreciation for all religions, or maybe I should say most religions of the world, because to me they are meant to be more symbolic than anything else. Like for example, back here, let me grab this guy. I don't know if you can see this on the pod. We've got the man, the legend right here, Mr. Christ, meditating, and he's dueling meditations across the way from Buddha here on our altar back here. And for me, it is so much more important. Again, this is just speaking from a exclusively personal perspective, to honor the symbolism of what that stands for. To me, Jesus stands for forgiveness. He stands for love. He stands for peace. He stands for non-vengeance and turning the other cheek, and non-judgment. And so that's really what psychedelics and psilocybin has enabled me to do, is really connect more to the energy of these beings that came here to show us the way. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And to me, that means what he stands for. Forgiveness and love is the way, the truth, and the life. Caring for others, caring for the sick, caring for the poor, that is the way, the truth, and the life. And so it's really similar to what Seamus is saying, is that it's not so much the actual idol of it itself, more so than what it symbolizes and what it stands for, as a reminder to me that, hey, that's what I want to aspire to be like. I mean, I'm a long freaking ways away. Just ask my wife. But it gives me a goal, and it gives me a target to be able to shoot for, and an example to be able to look at. So I think that's the value in it for me, and that's what's deepened on my journey.
Well, thank you guys both for sharing your journey with faith, as mine still tends to be a ominous and conflicted one, but I think
you're right where you're supposed to be.
Exactly, right? All I can say is that, the main thing that I hope to extract from anything is more so the values, which is more of what you're saying here, Zach. The values at which people should live by, and the natures that you should treat other people with, in order to hopefully be a good person and leave a legacy behind. But going back to what we talked about with ego, the thing that really bothers me when it comes to people that are so devout with their faith is the ego that's associated with their thing being the right way.
The arrogance. Yep. My way's right. My way's right. Your way is wrong. I'm going to heaven. You're going to hell. I can't stand that.
I've spoken about this at length, Marcos, and I know we're supposed to end, but like my buddy, this is, if you were truly to follow the Bible, truly, like the way it's done, there's a church in like Western Mississippi, like they technically would be like, because they follow everything, technically they would be like a terrorist group. Like because like considering our laws, because of the way it's played out in religious doctrine, and not just them, not just these Christian faiths, like there's different doctrines that like it would be like technically, if you were to follow that out and play it out the way it is, it's like in our humanitarian laws today as they stand, it would be like that's like a criminal activity. So yeah, it's kind of it's hard to watch people that are so absolute about their faith and judge others, because I don't think that's exactly what, like, let's just say a Christ figure, like, was actually trying to do.
Well, how can, see, so I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. How can you be unconditional loving, but also have conditional judgment? And by saying that my way is the only right way, I'm automatically judging everyone else who doesn't believe the same way I do. So how can I fully love them? How can I love my neighbor as myself and simultaneously judge them? And that's been the problem with religions, and that's been the wars, for millennia now, have been specifically based on that. And what it comes down to is ego, which causes that separation. Because again, the main thing I talked about, or the first thing I talked about with ego, is it helps me identify me as me and not you. Well, in reality, in my philosophies of understanding through these experiences, is we're actually all one. We're one being. We are God consciousness shattered into trillions of different pieces, billions of different sentient pieces, but also throughout everything. And so when I say my way is right and your way is wrong, it never stops. It gets to smaller and smaller groups. And that can be displayed through the different denominations among Christianity itself. I grew up Seventh-day Adventist, right? So we were the Sabbath keepers, the ones that go to church on Saturday, right? And most mostly vegetarian, vegan, no alcohol, no dancing, no jewelry. You can't go into the
No,
movie.
you can even like hold hands, man.
No school dances growing up. We had banquets and we couldn't even go into, it was advised that we didn't go into the movie theaters because our prophetess Ellen White of the Seventh-day Adventist Faith said that your guardian angels will not, it's such an evil place in the movie theater that your guardian angels will not be able to follow you in there. So you'll be unprotected in there and you should never go. But one of their main beliefs is that anyone, it's not just believe in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and you should be saved. That's what parts of the Bible say. Well, that's what Paulianity says. Paul, Jesus didn't actually say that, but Paul said that. And the problem is it's no longer just that. Then we have to divide and divide and divide again, so much so that you look at the denominations of Christianity and they're now referred to, each one calls themselves the remnant church. Catholicism calls themselves that. The Mormons call themselves that. The Seventh-day Adventists call themselves that. We believed growing up that unless you worshiped on Saturday, not being an evil, dirty, stinky Sunday keeper, you can't go to church on Sunday because that's the false Sabbath. If you didn't go to church on Saturday, you would not go to heaven. The Mormons believe that if you're not baptized into the Mormon church, even posthumously, that's why they baptize people after they die. That's why they're so good at ancestry. The Mormons believe that if you're not baptized, at least after death, into Mormonism, that they hold the keys to the kingdom of heaven and that you won't be saved. And so you start looking at it, it's not just Christianity versus Islam versus Hinduism or whatever else. You divide yourselves into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller groups, and that's simply divisive. And that comes from the ideology of I'm right and you're wrong. And as long as we have that ideology, the world is not going to get any better. And so from my belief system is I think that all religions hold some truth, but no one religion has all of it. And I think that each one were divine interpretations of the same divine source. The Native Americans refer to it as the Great Spirit. The Hindus refer to it as all of their other embodiments of God, Krishna, Ganeshu, Saraswati, all of these. Islam refers to it as Allah. So to me, it's all of these cultures from around the world are definitely picking up on something bigger than themselves and definitely feeling that there's something else out there for sure, but it's their beautiful interpretation. And I believe that diversity was made to celebrate, was made to appreciate and not to scorn. And so I think that it creates the palette of color that makes up the human spiritual experience. And I will never be egotistical or arrogant enough, again, in that way, to say that I'm right and you're wrong. I refuse. So
Mike,
Beautifully said, man. Like that embodiment of all the different ones is more so my belief as well. So perhaps I know you don't necessarily have an official scripture or doctrine with the church necessarily.
we
But
do actually.
you do? Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, on the website. Yeah, check it out.
Oh, I mean, I see that, but like, do you have like an actual? You don't have like a book that you're reading from?
We don't have a holy book yet, so yeah, I'm going to be working on writing it. Although I won't call it holy.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, if there was like ideas and thoughts that obviously intertwine and interweave these different ideas, and again, like almost like a polytheistic view of all the current religions versus just like, you know, polytheism as it used to be for, you know, ancient cultures that believe that there's a god of thunder, a god of rain, a god of whatever, you know.
Sure.
To me, like you said, it's like they're all, if we can look at like a computer language, right? They're all pointers to maybe the same source code that's a little bit harder to understand because it's beyond the comprehension of the human mind. And so it's just fascinating to me that, like, again, your view is more aligned with my view. And while I did, you know, was raised quasi-Catholic, you know, and I've actually worked for the diocese, ironically enough, because I was a teacher inside of, you know, a faith-based school. The more and more did it take me away from my actual belief in that previous religion, right? And only because I started questioning as to like, there's probably more. And who's to say that this is absolute? Like, speaking in absolutes is such a hard thing, right? Unless it's like a tautology, and even in mathematical language, right? Like, you have to have, like, yes, there are supposed truths and things you need to believe upon, but to say that they're absolutely right is still kind of unknown, which is like one of the great miracles of life, is that so many beautiful things have been built on a broken system. Mathematics is still broken, as beautiful as it is, and constantly people are interweaving and finding new ways to express reality, but it's all based on supposed truths, right? Because we just can't say yet that the axiomatic laws that we've created, right, are, they haven't been disproven until they can be disproven. So that's kind of like where my mind is. And, the mathematical mind behind my brain is very fascinating, to say the least. And that's why I struggle with fucking religion, guys. Like,
It's brilliant, dude. It's freaking brilliant, dude. It's great. Well, dude, Zach, thank you for this. I feel like this conversation this
This is great,
conversation is
dude.
like
I think the
it's so
perfect end
great,
to
dude.
it. I think it culminated at the right thing. I think if people want to go find more, dude, like, I mean, the website's easy to navigate. If you're in the right state, you can even get started with it. You have like an outline of what to do, and we'll have that link below. So Psilovibe.org, right, is the website. So if people want to go take a peek at that and look at everything that's going on there, even like the live events portions of it, right? How to get in contact. I mean, your site is super simple to navigate. Like even a caveman can do it. I mean, oh, sorry, don't sue us, Geico.
Hey, clean that out. But yeah, Zach, I really appreciate you. Seriously, no, the conversation. I'm so glad we spent more than an hour with you because it's really opened up my mind, and like you're just so succinct with how you explain these things. It's true. I feel like working on these things. I'm just kind of like a mini observer doing the thing. But macro perspective peeps, check out the links, give them a like. Zach, thanks so much for your time, man.
Hey, thanks so much for having us, fellas.